This manhwa begins in a neighborhood where the residents struggle to stop the gentrification of their neighborhood and not be bitten by vampires. In front of the church, a gangster and his men ask two little children where the priest is, and the brave little girl, who knows who they are, tells them to go away. The gangster touches her head, and she pushes him away. Then he tells her they need the priest for some papers and that their construction work keeps getting held up because of them. He also tells the kids that they shouldn't think he and his men would go easy on them because they are orphans, so they should hurry and get the priests. Just then, a girl with a plastic bag over her face calls them a-holes and tells them to scream before she tears them a new one as she runs towards them, holding a bowl of water. The gangster pulls her by the hair as he asks her who she is and says that the area is so trashy that it's got all kinds of sewer trash trying to start something on him. The kids call the girl Hayan and tell the gangster to leave her alone. Hayan, our main character, asks the gangster where they are supposed to go if he gets rid of their houses. The gangster starts to take off the plastic bag covering her face. But before he can, someone interrupts by asking if anyone can give him directions to the police station. They turn around to see a handsome red-haired guy. He asks them to tell him how he can get to the nearest police station. The gangster rudely tells him to go find it himself, and the guy says okay and starts to leave. As he walks away, the gangster goes back to terrorizing the kids and Hayan, demanding they call the priest or he will let his fist do the talking. The handsome guy stops and tells the gangster that he should really watch his mouth. The guy places his forehead on the gangster as he asks him in a threatening manner if he wants to spend the night behind bars. The gangster starts to get ready to fight with the guy while one of the gangster's men stares at the guy, who seems familiar to him, and then he recognizes who he is. He whispers something in his boss's ear, and the gangster walks away with his men, saying he will be back in a week and the priest better be there. After they leave, Hayan holds the kids, apologizing for being late, and asks them if they are scared. The boy admits that he was scared, and the girl says she wasn't and was about to teach them a lesson while the guy just watched them. Then he walks away, saying they should avoid the gangsters, who he refers to as scum, while putting his cigarette in his mouth. Hayan stops him and thanks him for helping them. He tells them there is no need to thank him and that he hates lowlife trying to make money like that. Hayan tells him that she can tell him how to get to the police station, and he tells her that he already knows where it is. Then she pulls the plastic bag from her head and stares at the guy as he walks away. Hayan has lived in an orphanage run by the church since she was 10. Because the neighborhood is run down and about to be identified, incidents like the one they just experienced are common. Hayan is used to it because living there has toughened her up. But there is something she struggles with, and that is making friends. The little girl would tell Hayan to go out for once and ask her if she didn't have any friends at school. Hayan told the little girl that she does, but they want to hang out with her all the time, which is tiring, and she would rather read at home. The girl told Hayan that once she goes to college, she should join a club and go to all the school's events and festivals. Hayan said she has 300 friends on social media and is super popular. But in truth, Hayan is the biggest loner on campus. She says hi to everyone on campus because she doesn't know who is in her major, and she eats alone at lunch while pretending that her friends are running late. The following day, people gather around the latest victim of a vampire. At the same time, the police and the paramedics secure the scene. Incidents like this have been occurring a lot lately, which makes the residents in the neighborhood scared. Hayan, who is on a bus on her way to school, sees the incident, and it scares her because it happened in the neighborhood next to hers. The victim's mother cries as she sees her daughter lying on the floor unconscious, bleeding from the neck, while everyone watches in horror. According to the news, no one knows where the vampires came from, if it is a mutation, or if they have always existed. They know nothing about the vampires, but what they do know is that they live among humans and only show their true forms after dark. The news anchor advises the people to be careful and says that murders by vampires are on the rise, and they should refrain from going outside once the sirens sound. They should make sure they never find themselves face to face with a vampire. Later that night, Hayan hangs out at a bar with people from school, playing drinking games. They have been playing the game for 2 hours straight, and Hayan has still not had the chance to talk to anybody in her year. All they do is smile awkwardly at her whenever they meet her eyes. She is glad that there are drinks because she feels it is going to make her and the other students more relaxed. Once they are drunk, then she will be able to become friends with them, and her life will be better. A couple of more drinks later, Hayan is still not drunk at all. It is like she has been drinking water instead of alcohol, and the people at her table have moved on, rendering her plans to make friends a failure. Everyone gathers around the table of a senior named Jang, who is known as the best drinker on campus, for a drinking game. Jang is a big guy with lots of beards, which makes the other students wonder if he is in his 20s. After Jang wins, everyone who dares to challenge him in a drinking competition. Hayan yells Jang's name and raises her glass, challenging him to a drinking competition. A whole lot of drinks later, Hayan emerges as the winner of the competition, making her the first person to win Jang in a drinking competition, and everyone cheers for her. A girl thanks her for saving them and asks if her name is Hayan, if it means white, and says she has a pretty name. The girl also asks Hayan for her number and if she wants to join their study group, which meets in the evenings. The guy says they only meet for karaoke, and Hayan says she likes karaoke, too. She thinks that she is finally going to make friends after a lifetime of being friendless, and alcohol is the best. As she chats and drinks with her new friends, a guy wearing a purple hat watches her. Their fun is cut short when the siren sound goes off. Immediately, everyone stops what they are doing and starts heading home. People who live far from the bar decide to spend the night with their friends who live close by or at school. Hayan comes out of the bar, thinking that she better go home before it gets too late. At that moment, the guy in the purple hat tells Hayan that he will walk her home, which surprises her. When he asks her if it is okay, she stammers, thinking that she doesn't know what to say. According to what she heard, he is a really popular senior, which makes her wonder why he is interested in her. As they walk, she tells him to walk home herself, and that it is dangerous to be out this late. The guy laughs as he says that there is nothing to worry about. He asks her if it isn't stuffy living at the Catholic church isn't kinda stuffy while every other person on the street hurries to their houses. She tells him it is nice because she is like an older sister to many kids and gets to be near some great folks. The siren goes off again, signifying that it is midnight, and everyone hurries to get on the last bus. Those who have already gotten home lock their windows and doors except Hayan and the guy, who continue to walk leisurely. Hayan tells the guy that he should head home, and she can take the last bus. She also tells him that there are a lot of empty houses in the neighborhood and no one will help if they see a vampire, and the guy tells her that vampires aren't a big deal. At that moment, they see the gangster who was looking for the priest the previous day beating up a man who owes him money. The man pleads with the gangster to leave him alone for the day and says it will be best for the both of them. The gangster, who Hayan recognizes, tells the man to say his last words as he grabs him and gets ready to punch him. Hayan closes her eyes in anticipation, and when she opens it, she is surprised to see the man has put his hand through the gangster's body. The man's eyes turn red, he has fangs and claws, and he says to the dying gangster that he should have left him alone. A terrified Hayan stammers as she tries to say vampire, and the guy with her curses when he sees the vampire and immediately runs away, yelling he is going home. Hayan stares at him as he runs, thinking he said that vampires don't scare him, and he wonders how he can run away by himself. The vampire starts approaching Hayan, laughing as he says he feels strangely excited. She tells the vampire to stay back and tells herself to stay calm as she searches her bag for something Father Michael gave her. The vampire asks her what she is looking for so desperately, and if it is a cross or garlic, and says it doesn't work. Hayan curses when she sees that she doesn't have it and starts yelling for somebody to help her, which makes the vampire laugh. He tells her there is nobody, and she pleads with him not to do what he has in mind while retreating backward until her back hits the brick wall. The vampire asks her if she is scared of vampires and tells her not to be because vampires were human once. Then he laughs loudly, revealing his sharp fangs, and punches the wall, which crashes immediately. He tells her being a vampire is a gift, and he will bestow the gift upon her. She tells him not to come close to her, but he ignores her as he says that he finds that drinking blood is better than getting high. Hayan wonders what she will do to escape as the vampire moves closer to her. He grabs her by the hair and says he will turn her into a vampire. To his surprise, Hayan grabs his hair back, and her hair starts to turn white and her nails black. She punches the vampire in the face, which sends him flying, and when he hits the floor, he causes a large cloud of dust. When the dust settles, Hayan stands there with her hair white, her nails long and black, and her fangs out. She says that it happened again and that she warned the vampire not to come near her because she has been a vampire since birth. Hayan jumps from one roof to another with lightning speed as she heads home. When she arrives, she rushes into her room looking for it, then she finds a crown made of thorns lying in her laundry hamper. She immediately wears it on her head and sighs in relief. Hayan transforms into a vampire if she really gets triggered by something, and the only way she can get it under control is if she puts on the crown of thorns. She transforms back to herself and makes a mental note to never leave the crown at home again, or she can forget going to school and living a normal life if she gets caught. She has been trying hard to hide the vampire from her so she can live among humans, but it hasn't been easy. She lies in bed thinking she just wants to live a normal life like everybody else. The next day in school, while Hayan studies, her professor places a drink in front of her, asking her if she is Hayan Park. Once she confirms that she is, he tells her that he has noticed how hard she works even after class and that he got her the drink to help her focus. She thanks him and he moves on to some other students. Professor Dongyu Park graduated from the same department as Hayan and became a professor at quite a young age. He is very dedicated to his job, and he memorizes all his students' names and even gives up his time to speak to students on days he doesn't teach. He is a legend at the school because he was able to get a scholarship while holding down 3 jobs when he was a student. He struggled financially because he was raised by a single mother, but now, things are finally looking up for him. He even said he was going to be a father in the coming month. Hayan thinks that she respects him and wants to work hard like him. After classes, Hayan's new friends tell her that they heard that she came across a vampire the previous night and ask her if she was hurt and if she is still alive. The guy among them says it was really low for the purple hat guy to abandon Hayan and run away. The girl tells them that it is said that 1 in every 10,000 people is a vampire, which means there are at least 1 or 2 vampires in the school, which scares them and makes Hayan nervous. The girl asks if there is a vampire in their major, which makes Hayan sweat, and the guy tells her not to go overboard with her imagination. They notice Hayan sweating, and Hayan lies, saying that she thinks that she has an upset stomach. When they ask her why she would suddenly start sweating if she has an upset stomach, she says it is how her body works. She thinks she managed to get through the police interrogation about the previous day without a hitch. Just then, she overhears some student talking about a vampire murdering a whole family in Busan. They say that at the rate it is going, the vampires are going to end all of their lives, and wishes that the vampires will just drop dead. They call vampires monsters, which brings back some old memories for Hayan. When she was a child, she was told that she must not become close to people. Because of that, she was always alone, and picture books became her only friend. While other kids played, she would play with her books, praying for a friend she could talk to. One day, her prayers were heard. A boy had asked her how she could read like that, and she looked at the book he was holding and said she had already read that one. They hung out that day, swinging, and he asked her about school. She told him that she just read. When other kids heard that she didn't go to school, they would whisper that she probably didn't know how to add and subtract and laugh at her. When the boy said she didn't go to school, she glared at him, expecting him to laugh at her, but he said he was jealous and wished he didn't have to go to school. He told her he didn't have any friends in school and asked if she wanted to go to the library with him, and he would skip school. She agreed and asked him if there were a lot of picture books in the library. He told her that there were a lot and asked her if it meant she was only looking at the pictures in her book when he first saw her, which made her embarrassed. She said no, and he laughed and said it was okay if she only wanted to look at the pictures. From then on, they met every day. He would tell her things he couldn't say to anyone in school, and she was grateful for him. When she was with him, she would forget she was a vampire. Then, sometime later, she realized that her happiness wasn't meant to last. She would see him covered in bruises, and when she asked him about it, he would say it was nothing, so she shouldn't worry about it. They started meeting less and less and eventually lost touch, which made her angry. She was furious that she hadn't been able to give him anything in return even though he had given her so much, and she wanted to help him. One day, while he was being bullied, she held the hand of the boy who wanted to hit her friend and threw him on the floor. She also punched the wall and told the bully to leave her friend alone. The wall crumbled, and all the bullies ran away scared. She asked her friend if he was okay while taking off her disguise, revealing her vampire form. Then she tried to explain to him what she was, but her friend trembled in fear and begged her not to kill him. Back in the present, Hayan's friends snap her out of her thoughts. The people on campus look at a senior they thought had dropped out of school because they haven't seen him in a while. The senior bumps into Hayan and tells her to watch where she is going. Hayan's male friend tries to defend her. Still, she tells him she is okay, and the girl says that the senior is practically a fossil in the department because he has been around for so long. Hayan thinks that there is something off about the senior. The senior is infamous even in other schools because he causes trouble wherever he goes. Every time he goes out to drink, he beats up his classmates and exports money from upperclassmen. He smoked in class, and when the lecturer called him out, he would say it was an e-cig, so technically, he isn't smoking indoors. Hayan's male friend says that he heard that the senior has been friends with Professor Park since high school, and it is incredible how they are different. Then the guy asks what is wrong with the senior because he looks ill. That night, the senior chugs down gallons of water, but it does nothing to quench thirst. He continues to walk until he passes some students who start gossiping about him. They say he is that old senior who entered college 9 years ago, making him 28 years old. They say that he is messing up their employment rate and he should go and die in a ditch. They stop to check up on him, seeing he doesn't look too good, but because it is getting late, they leave. He wonders if they know he wasn't able to get a job and thinks that they are secretly laughing at him for not getting a job or even graduating his age. He thinks about all the things they have said about him and feels that it doesn't matter because he has received a kick-ass gift. The gift is that he is now a vampire. The siren goes off, and everyone starts hurrying home, including Professor Park, who is running to his car while talking to his mother on the phone. When he sees the senior Byeonsu, who is his longtime friend but hasn't seen in a while, he rounds up his conversation with his mother so he can say hello. Byeonsu calls the professor fatty in his mind and thinks that he is still an eyesore. Professor opens his car, as he tells Byeonsu that he has been wondering what he was up to since he heard he came back to school, but didn't see him around. Since he is in a hurry, he enters his car and continues talking to his mother. Byeonsu thinks that he and Park are following completely different paths even though they started college at the same time. He also wonders how Park got a job in the school and if he paid off the school. Then he thinks that Park's car doesn't suit him and probably bought it to pick up girls. Then, he thinks that his life is a joke and that it doesn't matter how hard he tries, he is destined to fail. Park honks his horn at Byeonsu, who is standing in front of the car, and then apologizes for doing that, saying he has been calling Byeonsu's name, but he doesn't answer. He asks Byeonsu to let him through, but in Byeonsu's head, Park tells him to F off to some place where he can't see him and calls him pathetic. Byeonsu imagines people laughing at him, and saying that he has completely wasted his life, and he is garbage. Then Byeonsu lifts Park's car in the air and throws it on the ground upside down. Then he goes to Park asking him if he thinks he is a joke and he is better than him, while Park asks him why he is doing this to him. Park also tells him to stay away from him when he sees that he is a vampire, as Byeonsu says that he has been given a new chance at life, and then he lunges towards Park. The following day, in the Department of Social Welfare Student Union Room, the students talk about the death of their beloved professor, Park, and hope that Byeonsu, who has been put on the wanted list, is caught by the police. As they speculate about the whereabouts of the insane Byeonsu, Hayan remains quiet and deep in thought. Her friend snaps her out of her thoughts, asking her if she is okay, and she says that she is. At that moment, the students get a text informing them of an emergency assembly by 9 p.m. in room 1003 in Gwanggido Hall. Hayan and her friends head to class as they wonder why the assembly is at night. Meanwhile, in one of the lockers Hayan and her friends passed, Baeongsu hides in there. That night, Baeongsu recalls his mother complaining about him still staying in the house and how much money they had spent on him when he was almost 30. He recalls when the school administrator told him that he would be expelled if he didn't get his grade up, and his friends not wanting to hang out with him because they were now working. He bursts out of the locker, asking if one knows how to avoid being treated like garbage. Then he answers his question by saying just kill everyone. In the assembly, the students wait for the professor to come, and Hayan's friends wonder where she is. Then the male friend asks the girl if she has seen his face masks, and she says no. Meanwhile, Baeongsu approaches the assembly room, saying he will show them just what happens when it makes him angry. However, when he enters the room, he finds it empty, which surprises him. He wonders where everyone went, and then he sees a sign that says, "Come to Gunju Hall." Back at the assembly, the professor wonders who sent a message that the venue for the assembly had been changed because none of them sent the text. Baeongsu arrives at the Gunju Hall, which is set for demolition and has signs that say "Do not enter outside." As he wonders if the assembly is really there, he notices that he is not alone and asks the person who they are. Hayan replies that it isn't important and asks him why he killed Professor Park. Baeongsu feigns shock as he asks her if Professor Park is her professor and says that teaching part-time is nothing to write home about, but Park, whom he calls fat, has such an inflated ego. He also says that that is what happens when a loser like Park thinks he deserves better, and Hayan asks him if that is the reason he killed Park. Baeongsu simply says yeah, which makes Hayan angry. She thinks that he ended the life of someone who was making a living because he felt inadequate in comparison. Professor Park didn't do anything wrong, and he didn't deserve to die the way he did. She takes a few steps toward Baeongsu as she says to him that the world has become a scary place to live in because of people like him. Kids can't play outside and people cower in fear at night. She comes to a halt right in front of him and tells him that she wants him to turn himself in, apologize to Professor Park's family, and suffer the consequences of his actions. Baeongsu punches her in the stomach, which sends her flying. He brags to himself about how strong his punch is, and he thinks that there is no limit to his strength. Suddenly, Hayan asks from behind him if he thought that the punch was incredible, which shocks him. He wonders if he missed and tells himself that it was a clean hit. Then he realizes that she is a vampire, too. He asks her how she managed to attend classes and says that she must be dying to drink blood. Then he asks to see her face, and when she doesn't make a move to show him her face, he says that the reason she is hiding her face is because she will be in trouble if anyone finds out who she is. He promises not to end her life if she reveals her face, and she tells him that the reason she is wearing the mask is for his sake because if he sees her face, she will have to kill him. He laughs and then starts punching her relentlessly while he says that she can pretend to be tough, but a girl like her is gonna get her butt kicked by him. When one becomes a vampire, their strength is doubled, so it is all relative to how strong they originally were. As he punches her, he enjoys the sound of skin tearing and bones breaking. Baeongsu was turned into a vampire one night while he was clubbing. A gang of vampires surrounded him in an alley and said that he was a perfect kid and someone like him should be useful. They gave him their blood to drink and told him that it was time to be reborn. When he turned, they told him that the life expectancy of a mixed-blood vampire is 5 years, but as long as he is part of the group led by an angel of death, he can prolong his life indefinitely. He will become a member of the group once his probation period is over. As he went on a killing spree after he woke up, the vampires watched him as they said that it usually takes 1 month for a person's body to adapt to the changes, but he managed to get up after 2 days. Back to the present, Baeongsu laughs, thinking that he has defeated Hayan, but to his surprise, she stands up unscathed. Then he realizes that the bones that were breaking while he was punching her were his. He screams in pain, falls to the ground, and asks her how she is so strong. She asks him if he thought about how much pain Professor Park must have gone through before he died and that Park's family members are going to suffer for the rest of their lives. She asks him how he could end his friend's life so easily. Baeonsu admits that he was jealous and says that his family is well off and Park's family is poor, but he had a better life than him. He continues by saying that he didn't accept that his life had become a joke, although he really didn't try to fix it, but if he had faced reality, things wouldn't have turned out this way. He cries, wondering why he got rid of Park, and says that Park was the only true friend he had. Then he rises from the ground as he asks who else would have let him use them as a toilet, referring to the time he bullied Park. He laughs hard and loud, and Hayan says that his life sucks because he pees away all the opportunities he gets. He tries to punch Hayan again while asking her to take off her mask now that she is about to die. She stops his punch with a finger and says that vampires can regenerate, so she will just make sure he can't regenerate. Then she squeezes his fist, spins him, and throws him on the ground. He looks at her as he recalls that the vampires that turned him told him that there is one thing he needs to beware of. They told him that if he ever finds himself facing a vampire who is an angel of death, he should keep his mouth shut and run away. They are the kings and queens of the vampire world. Even though they didn't believe he would ever encounter one, they still told him that if he came across one, he would be as good as dead. They call those types of vampires the white-haired vampires. Hayan beats Baeongsu so hard that some part of the building begins to crumble. He pleads with her not to kill him and promises to face the consequences. She tells him that if he wants to face the consequences, then he should die, and then she hits him on the ground so hard that it cracks. Baeonsu lies there on the floor with almost all his teeth knocked out, and then he slowly starts disappearing. Baeonsu pleading with Hayan not to kill him reminds her of her old friend. Then she walks away. The following day, the police and detectives gather at the scene where the vampire attacked Hayan after she left the bar with the guy wearing the purple hat. The detectives complain about why there is a vampire task force when the corpse of a vampire disappears without a trace and ask how they catch a demon, and the detective jokes, saying an exorcist, but the other person doesn't find it funny. The detective complains about having a headache and asks his partner if an exorcist came, and the other says it is not an exorcist, it is a demon. The senior detective taps the junior detective on his face as he tells him to do his job properly, and the junior detective apologizes. The senior detective asks his junior if he has found any yet and why he is so slow as they watch the forensic team examine the clothes of the vampire, who disappeared after he died. The junior says that there are no security cameras in the area and dash cams haven't picked anything up, and when the senior asks him if there were any witnesses, the junior says that there were 2 students, one male and one female, at the scene around that time, but they both have alibis. The senior asks what that alibis are, and the junior shows him footage of Hayan, who was wearing a hoodie that covered her hair, and the purple hat guy both arriving at their houses, as he said that a local resident reported the crime immediately after it happened, and both students were caught on camera in front of their houses at the time, and their houses are over 20 minutes away, which proves their alibis. The senior detective kicks the junior as he tells him to do a better job so he will have something to work with, and the junior simply apologizes. The junior thinks that even though the senior detective worked in the force for a long time, he always dumps all of his work on the juniors and then takes the credit afterward, which is why he really hates working with the senior detective. A voice asks if there is any blood and the junior detective says they couldn't detect any, and then both of them become shocked when they see someone standing behind them. The junior detective calls the red-haired guy who saved Hayan from the gangsters, Captain Huang. Captain Huang greets him and tells him to repeat what he said so he can be filled in. The senior detective asks Captain Huang who sent him and if his investigation team told him to snoop around other people's crime scenes. Then he taps Huang on the chest as he tells him to go back and stick to his job, and even calls him son. Huang brushes off his shirt and grabs the senior detective's wrists as he exclaims that the watch the senior detective is wearing is really expensive. The detective says he spent a bit of money on it and then tells Huang to mind his business. However, Huang doesn't let him go. He sniffs the watch and says that it smells like cologne even though the senior detective doesn't use any, and he would think that the senior detective would buy a watch that fits him since he spent so much on it. He continues by pointing out that the time on the watch is currently the time in Russia. BX says that he wonders if that tall, heavy-set drug trafficker from Russia, who was released not too long ago, got back home without any problems. Then he looks at the senior detective and says that he thought that taking watches as a bribe went out of fashion a long time ago. The shocked senior detective starts to stammer, and Huang tells him that there is no need for him to get flustered because he is just speculating while tapping him on the shoulder, and then tells him that they should be polite to each other since they are on the same side. While the junior detective thinks that Captain Huang is truly amazing and he is the only one who can take bullies like the senior detective down a notch. Captain Untae Huang graduated early from the police academy. He has an amazing memory and never forgets anything that he has seen once. Since the Vampire Task Force was formed, his arrest rate has been over 80%. He distinguished himself with his groundbreaking arrest tactics and was awarded a national medal of the highest order at a young age. His list of achievements is endless. He is called Demon because he is so good at hunting vampires. Untae Huang excuses himself from the detectives and crosses the yellow tape while the senior detective's boss asks the senior detective about the watch. Untae looks at a crack on the concrete floor while an officer tells him that the dead guy was thrown out of a building, and he thinks a couple of vampires got into a fight. Untae looks at the building, which looks like something heavy was thrown at it, and thinks that if there had really been a fight, there would have been traces of it, so this wasn't a fight. It was a one-sided beating, and the guy taking the beating couldn't even get in a single hit. He says aloud that the killer wasn't an average vampire. In Hayan's school, a crowd gathers in front of the collapsed Gunja Hall as the police secure the scene. The students wonder if it is the doing of a vampire, and some students hold a small protest against the school for not doing anything about the vampire issues despite their repeated demands for a solution. Hayan's friends agree with the protesters, while Hayan thinks that she has to be more careful. They walk away, asking Hayan where she was the previous night, and she lies that she went home because she had an upset stomach. They don't notice that someone is watching them until the person says, "Excuse me." Untae, who is the person, asks Hayan if she is Hayan Park, and her friends whisper, asking her if Untae is her boyfriend or a billionaire. Hayan recognizes him as the guy who asked for directions to the police station, and Untae introduces himself to her, telling her all of his achievements. After that, the two of them walk through campus without Hayan's friends, and other students admire his physique, while Hayan wonders what the police want with her now because they already spoke to her the previous day and they didn't suspect her because she told them she fled the scene. Untae says he came to offer support, and that he was worried that she might be in a lot of shock because it was a frightening incident, which shocks her because she thought he read her mind for a second. Then he invites her to have lunch with him and tells her that she can ask him any question she wants. Hayan proceeds to pretend like she doesn't know anything and asks him what happens when a vampire gets caught. Untae tells her that vampires' weakness is in their hearts, but because they can regenerate their bodies, it is not easy to get rid of them by stabbing or shooting them. Their hearts have to be completely extracted to put an end to them, and that can't be done because tranquilizers don't work in them, which is why they paralyze the vampires using electrified wire and throw them in a blast of furnace that is over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Hayan laughs nervously as she says that he must have a grudge against vampires, and he tells her that he wants to return things back to how they were 10 years ago, no matter what it took. He says he wants to be able to stay out late, have drinks with friends, walk his dog while looking at the stars, and go on a date by the river in the moonlight. He vows to catch all the vampires and bring things back to normal again. At the restaurant, Untae orders a lot of food for himself, saying that he is excited to eat things other than the stew they sell around the station, while Hayan orders one roll of gimbap. He tells her to order more since he is paying, but she refuses. Gus starts to eat while Hayan tries not to throw up, as the smell of food irritates her. Then Untae yells in pain, which draws her attention to his bleeding hand, and he says that he cut himself. She asks him if he is okay while wondering how he sliced the side of his hand, and he tells her that he is used to seeing blood in his line of work while letting the blood drip. Hayan's heart starts beating rapidly as she watches the blood, and she gulps. Untae sucks his blood, then looks at Hayan and she quickly looks away while secretly clenching her thorn crown in her back. She thinks that Untae is doing this on purpose to make her reveal her secret, that he knows that vampires can't eat normal food, and he is trying to see how she reacts to blood. Untae apologizes to her, saying that he hopes she didn't lose her appetite, and tells her to hurry up and eat before the food gets cold. He asks her why she isn't eating, and then leans close to her and asks if she is someone who can't eat normal food. She asks him what he means, and he tells her that he didn't think there would be anyone in Korea who couldn't eat gimbap. Then he says that he can think of some people who can't, vampires. He continues by saying that vampires can only consume blood and beverages, and he heard that as soon as they eat normal food, their blood stops circulating, and they feel excruciating pain. Hayan wonders how Untae knows that she is a vampire and thinks that he is trying to get her to blow her cover. She considers lying that she has an upset stomach so she can leave, but she changes hearing as she figures that it will only make him confirm that she is a vampire. So, with trembling hands, she picks up her chopsticks, and Untae says that maybe he shouldn't have said what he said as he watches her eat. She shoves gimbap into her mouth, saying that it smells too good to resist, while he just stares at it in surprise. She offers him a piece, but he refuses. After they go their separate ways, Hayan throws up everything in her stomach in the toilet, and when she finishes, she sits on the toilet feeling drained as she thinks that she was able to narrowly escape being caught this time, but she should be more careful next time. She says a prayer, begging God to help her out a little, and promises him that she will clean the church and won't miss a single mass. She also promises to live a quiet life. Immediately she steps out of the restroom, she runs into Untae, and in her despair, she thinks she is skipping mass from then on. Untae says he was looking around the school, and it is a coincidence they ran into each other again, which she doesn't believe but just goes with it. He notices that she is holding the sticky rice bread she got earlier at the dining hall after they finished eating. She quickly tells him that they are for her younger brother and sister at home and asks him if he wants some while holding them away from him. He says he can't take them, and she walks away laughing as she says thank goodness and then turns to him and says that kids really love bread. Then she walks away, thinking that she is finally free. Outside, the leader of the protesters pulls at a scalpel and says that it is time for them to take matters into their own hands and that they should prove that they are not vampires. He announces that vampires are said to have powerful healing abilities, and then he and everyone protesting with him pull up their sleeves to show the crowd that the cut they gave themselves hasn't healed, proving that they are not vampires, which shocks the students watching them. He says that once they find a vampire, they will turn them over to the police and that vampires can't use their strength when the sun is out. He also says that he knows what they are doing is extreme, but he has no choice but to suspect anyone who refuses to be cut. His fellow protesters enter the crowd to start cutting people, and some refuse to get cut because they think the method is too extreme or messed up. While Hayan stands in the crowd, thinking of how she is going to escape, just as one of them approaches her. But before the person could do anything, Untae grabs her hand and pulls away. He whispers to her that she should start walking while she stares at him in surprise. 3 protesters block their way and ask Hayan if they have done the test to prove that she is not a vampire. One of them says that they will just cut Hayan lightly with a scalpel deep enough to draw blood, and they will treat the cut right away. She also points out that it looks like Hayan is trying to avoid doing the test, and she should better do it if she has nothing to hide. Hayan tells her that it isn't right for her to suspect her without proper reason, and they can't force her to do something against her will. The female protester angrily asks Hayan how she can say that when she knows what happened at their school. Then she grabs Hayan's hand, and in that second, Hayan thinks that she can't get away and she will be found out as soon as they cut her. However, when the female protester pulls up Hayan's sleeves, she sees a bloody bandage on Hayan's arm, which surprises both of them. Untae tells the female protester that they already did it and asks her if she needs more proof. Hayan, who realizes that the bandage is Yuntae's bandage from when he cut his hand earlier, confirms that she has already been cut and tells the female protester that she was forced against her will earlier, and now she is doing it again. The leader of the protests says as he walks to them that Hayan could have gotten the bandage anywhere and that he didn't see her do the test, so she needs to do it again. Hayan glares at him, thinking that she is going to get caught, and wonders what she is going to do as she can't think of a way out. The leader starts to reach for her, but Untae stops him by grabbing his wrist and says that Hayan is not on the operating table, so he thinks that cutting her once is enough. Then he adds that it is a crime to go around using a blade on people against their will, and unless they all want to be charged with a crime, he suggests they stop. He squeezes the guy's hand harder and says that he understands how he feels, but he should let them go. The guy yells that he doesn't trust Untae or Hayan and says that they need to catch the vampires today, no matter what it takes, even if they get expelled. Untae shows the protesters his ID card and asks them if that is proof enough. Then he tells them that Hayan is on her way to the police station to assist with the investigation and asks them if they want to tag along while Hayan stares at him. That night in Hayan's home, she watches her siblings sleep until she gets a text from Untae, which says that if she ever gets in any trouble, she should feel free to contact him. Suddenly the little girl asks her if she has a boyfriend now, which shocks Hayan because she thought the girl was asleep. The girl says that she can tell Hayan is talking to a guy just from the way she is typing, and the boy says that he can sense her excitement. Hayan tells them to go back to sleep and thinks that Untae is no ordinary person. She wonders why he just let her go earlier and thinks that she feels like he is not a bad person as she recalls all the times he saved her. Meanwhile, Untae stands on the roof with a cigarette in his mouth as he says that he didn't think he would run into one like this while staring at a picture of Hayan with her siblings and a cat. He says that he finally found a pure-blood vampire. To follow Hayan's journey, please like, share, and comment to fight Manhwa. Thank you.